continent. Now, without further ado, let's invite China's most prestigious expert in this field, Professor Nanshan Zhong, to share his experience and learnings on leading China to fight the coronavirus. Please.
Right. So, Mr. Martis and colleagues, everybody, good morning. So, I think first of all, I would like to thank the GE company for organizing this kind of webinar, and then we have the opportunity to exchange some experience and even lessons from each other. So probably in this in the next few say 10 or 15 minutes, I just would like to point out some important points. So perhaps can I have the slides, please?
现在我希望把我的幻灯片放到屏幕上。
他好像没有人在操控的鼠标前的时候，我觉得这句话鼠标是。So very okay. 你鼠标嘛？那些是那个就是有写了一个So this is the today's data. So you can see globally that really a pandemic of this COVID-19 infection. So altogether, so more than 1,900,000 people infected with more than 127,000 people died, with the mortality of 6.4%, quite high of the mortality. So this is the situation nowadays in Europe as well as in the US, still going up. Maybe going to the plateau, but I don't know. Maybe in a few days, I hope so, going to the plateau and going down. So this is the situation. I would like to mention some of our work being done in the last 2 months. So this is our strategy about the controlling further spreading at the beginning of the January. So this is since the day of 20th of January. So the executive committee of the expert going to Wuhan and then make some investigation and announce there's definitely the human-to-human transmission. And the second may confirm there's a medical staff have been infected. That's a very important fact in this way. So since then, so we have to take some action to that. So the very briefly, I would like to take this picture that's from UK, so that the epidemiologists mentioned about how to control, how control measures can reduce spread of virus in the United Kingdom. Now here is the actions, no action taken at all, and here, and this is this curve is the national health system. It's the capacity and whether they can afford for this kind of outbreak. So people just try to reduce the peak in under the curve, under this line. So and then all of them can afford of this outbreak. So the measure is control measure, say like self-isolate, like isolating if the patient is ill, and social distancing for vulnerable, and whole household isolation if one member is ill. I think this is not that enough because that's highly contagious of this kind of COVID-19 infection. So even by these measures, I think in the UK have not been complete fully. So that's why something happened. So actually in China, we had also faced this kind of problem. How we can deal with this one? So actually now, how to make a delay and suppress the outbreak, the peak. So there are two directions here. One is suppression, another one is so-called mitigation. So the suppression is a very strong action by the government, central government, to inhibit the outbreak. Of course, by this way, we will cause a great impact of the economy here. So the leaders, President Xi had mentioned, so we should put the safety and health in the first, the life in the first, in the whole country. In other words, no matter how much impact to the economy, that's the idea. Another way is the mitigation. Just try to get a delay action. So whether they can put the peak down to the level of the national health system capacity. But however, because of the high reproductive number, say something like reach something like 3, so it's pretty high. So this delay, whether it will be effective or not, so that's a big question. So in China part, the central government, so just take this director, suppression. So what kind of action they have done? Here, now, let's see. Yes, the so-called very intensive suppression strategy. So first of all, that's in 23rd, so lockdown Wuhan. So that's a very strong action. Don't go to Wuhan and don't leave Wuhan. So the public should make it more transparent. So the governor announced all the cities, all the areas should have real-time announcement of the number of diagnosis patients every day in each city nationwide. And the third is the so-called interagency mechanism. In other words, I can interpret it as the so-called early self-protection, the distancing, the goal that early detection, early diagnosis, that's the very early stage. The big hospital can make a diagnosis rather than going to the CDC to make a diagnosis, final diagnosis, and early isolation, of course. That policy is down to the community level. So that's a very important point. And then the RT-PCR checkup in all close contact, including those without symptoms. So this is some action. This is actually started in Wuhan. That's 23rd January. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. But what happens then? You can see this is 21st January. So actually, the new diagnosis the number is increasing, so reaching the peak 2 weeks later. And after 2 weeks, is actually the new diagnosis, the number is going down here. So after another 2 weeks altogether, 1 month really going down. So just talk about 1 month to basically control the outbreak of these. So you can see nowadays in the world, and this is in China. So after that, there's some other countries, in particular in Europe as well, and in the United States, start this delay action in the beginning of March, of course. So just before that, a lot of countries had not action for that, but actually had not been under control. So after 4 weeks and 5 weeks, still going up. Now this is some from Spain, Germany, France, Italy, and some Iran and so on. Seems to be increasing, but now seems to be keeping in plateau. But the only exception is in the United States. I think that's 2 points. The first point, I think in the United States, they have made a great survey. I think that's good to find out some patients infected with COVID-19. But in other words, the diagnostic numbers pretty high, so up to close to 600,000. That's the number, but seems to be still going up. So in other words, the control policy, the control action is not that strong. So this is the situation. So I should say by this way, in China, actually in Wuhan, that actually is out of control in that time. But quickly, so the government take action and also so block Wuhan, and also to the other part of China will just take the early strategy. So that's curves going to be here, so just 1 month. And I think in Europe now, I suppose Europe will be going to the plateau. I don't know what will be happening. So in the US later on, perhaps in another 1 week, or when it depends on what kind of action you have taken. So this is first things that maybe this is the first way. I think the second way is we have more challenge, including China. So how can we make a balance in between the control and economy development? So actually, we have lost a lot of GDP and have a big loss of in terms of economy, but we cannot maintain this so continuous. How could we move the balance between them? So that's a big problem facing China, that is facing. The second point would be transmission role. So transmission role is definitely, there are two roles. One is the droplets. Droplet transmission, so usually it will be within 2 meters. We'll have the droplet transmission, definitely transmission. And the second will be close contact from each other. That's 2, will be definitely yes. And the others, maybe something like mother to child vertical transmission. There's no evidence showing that. So in our data, and also whether there's a transmission from the feces as urine, because we had already cultured the alive virus from feces and urine, and whether there are another role from feces to respiratory tract and then to cause the infection. So it's possible. So this is we have cultured the alive virus, so in the feces and urine, and this is some example. So you can see in Hong Kong, so the same urine, and here, so one was infected, another third more, and infected as well. So that must be some owing to some leakage of the sewer and exhausted pipe. So that's maybe the mechanism. In particular, like in outbreak in Diamond Princess cruise ship. So as you know, so more than 3,000 passengers in board. So eventually, that's close to 1,000 being affected. So that's not because of face-to-face, so talking and then get infected. Maybe via the closed pipe or sewer, and then to get infected. So the core of control transmission, I suppose, for our European colleagues, I suppose now you have promote the role. One is keep distance. I think that's one core. And the second was wear mask. I think that's a big argument about wear mask. But actually, wear mask is useful. Somebody said wear mask maybe that's to prevent you from transmission to others. But in China, the notion is the other part. Wear mask is prevent the others to transmit to you. So this is a different idea. Actually, it's true. So because the majority of the virus is not free in the air, that's the heat in the droplets. So the during cough and the droplets is not going so far. too far, something like 1 to 2 meters. So the mask can protect that. So the third point I would like to mention, transmission by import patient, because in China we have been facing this point, because in China we are basically under control without more people being infected. Actually, at the moment, quite a big number, probably close to 1,000. So infected by the foreign imports people. So in particular, those were asymptomatic patients with the COVID-19 infection. So probably we should pay more attention to the asymptomatic patient, because from our data showing incubation period, the majority would be 3 to 7 days. So the maximum may be 14 days. So in fact, during this incubation time, there's no symptom in this patient, or perhaps the symptom very mild. The patient does not care about that. In particular, from our data, we show about 50% of the patient had no fever, so afebrile. So fever is not the first symptoms appear. So something like fatigue or cough, that's the first symptoms. So in particular, so we need to pay attention to those people who are close contact with infected patients. And the second is those who are just came back from the outbreak communities. These two group of patients, we should give some check up to those that in order to avoid further transmission. So this is one of the evidence showing that's the onset of COVID-19. So this is this is a throat. This nasal swab. This is throat swab. So also that's higher virus load in the upper airway. So in the first 5 days of the onset, after 5 days, perhaps after 1 week, the virus load is pretty low, lower down. So the effectivity will be decreasing. So in the very early onset, and as well as the asymptomatic period, that's very high contagious. People should be very much aware about that. So as you know, we usually use basic reproductive number to show that how high is the infectivity. So as you make a comparison, SARS as usually is 1 to 2. One person infect 2 patients. And then the MERS less than 1. And seasonal influenza 1.5. But the majority of the data showing close COVID-19 close to 3 or even 4 or 5 in some of the countries. That means that's very contagious. So the prevention of the infection is pretty important. And then, so very quickly, I just introduce some of the randomized control study. Actually, it's not randomized, open control study, because everybody, so all the countries are facing a new disease. Nobody knows how to treat them. So there's no effective drugs available for this kind of target treatment. So we have been trying some of them, like this one, we call it Calitra, which is introduced since the outbreak of SARS 17 years ago. So chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, an IL-6 receptor antibody. So that's dealing with the cytokine storm. This is Chinese herb like the Lianhua Qingwen capsule, and also hydrogen-oxygen mixed gas inhalation, which is very simple and be used like oxygen inhalation. And remdesivir have been showing some efficacy of that. So first of all, the Calitra. So after a randomized control study, that's the first study in Wuhan, And based on the time for clinical improvement, so you can see, so the treatment group and the control group, it shows no difference in shortening the duration of clinical improvement. And also, it shows no difference in the significant reduce the virus load. That's Calitra seems to be disappointed of this one. That second one, so we have done, so will be published soon. So clinical application of chloroquine. So we from the laboratory test. So by using 500 milligrams twice a day, that means for 10 days. So now we changed because of the toxic, some adverse effect. We use 500 milligrams twice a day for 2 days, and the other days just 500 milligrams in close to 200 patients in 10 hospitals. So the plasma concentrations up to 1 to 1.5. I think this is enough to kill the COVID-19 virus, because the EC50 is quite close to that. So EC50 is only 1.13 micromole per liter. So this is, we have also found the target proteins, 3CL protein for COVID-19. So this is the result, because it's not published yet. So I just show you some of the results rather than show you some picture. So the patient received a chloroquine, so have a shortened time as compared with control, 3 days versus 9 days. And then by the day of 10 of day 14, a higher proportion of patients with virus turn into negative. So, and also the fever significantly shorter in chloroquine group. And this is another study. I think this is only 20 patients. So I suppose you have seen that. So our friends, colleagues, 600 milligrams hydroxychloroquine daily. So 200 milligrams 3 times a day for 10 days. And virus load have been in the nasopharyngeal swabs have been checked every day. So depending on their clinical presentation, 6 patients have received azithromycin. So for 500 milligrams first day, and then 250 milligrams the 2 to 5 fifth days. And this is the result with the virus turning to negative over time here. So you can see this is a control group, and this is chloroquine group here, chloroquine group, and this is chloroquine plus azithromycin. Seems to be quite beautiful, but I suppose it is less convincing. Still have no so solid evidence showing that that's as effective, very effective of this. So that's why some of the country has started a mass control study looking at the hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin, whether it is really working or not. So this is some Chinese herb. We have been using this one. We call the Lianhua Qingwen Jiaolang LHQ. So this kind in the laboratory work. So we did the antivirus activity and anti-inflammation activity in T3 lab, and showed that this had a weak antivirus activity. However, it did show a very strong anti-inflammation activity. And then we have carried out study, so clinical trial for this kind of Chinese herbs. So close to 200 patients, one in one. And then the result is showing high overall recovery rate in the treatment group as compared with control. So, and also faster symptom recovery, so as compared with the control, and higher rate of CT improvement, and as compared with the control. However, there's no significant difference or in conversion rate of severe case or the viral conversion time in between 2 groups. So maybe this kind of Chinese herb will be effective in mild and non-severe COVID-19 patients. And then convalescent plasma, second, which is really show effective. There are two papers. One is this is an open study published in JAMA, and 5 critical ill patients, and then with ARDS, of course, and then donor. So convalescent plasma must match this criteria with specific antibody binding for 1 to 1,000. And the second is a neutralization titer with more than 40. So just one dose, 400 mils. So you can see, just very briefly, you can see the result. Here, this circulation time, the higher the circulation time, the lower the virus load. You can see the virus load is going down. And the second is the severity of the disease going down, so far score. And then this oxygenation going up and temperatures going down. And this is just shown. That's another paper published in PNAS. Also, the open study. Recovered donors, that's a little bit different from the last one. And then 10 patients received 2 times of 200 mils of convalescent plasma. And then, just look at the result. I suppose I just show you one of these. The serum, in terms of serum neutralization, antibody is majority very much improved. And also the serum virus load. So this is some still, it's not weak, positive. And the majority of them after infusion of convalescent plasma also negative. So the last one will be hydrogen-oxygen mixed gas. Actually, this is some study, actually, helium and oxygen mixed gas. And 30 years ago, it used to treat the patient with dyspnea, so sort of brain. So we use the hydrogen-oxygen mixed gas because we just use a simple equipment. We can change the water into hydrogen and oxygen. Because the mixed gas, the hydrogen, the molecular weight is pretty the lowest as compared with nitrogen. So that's why the patient can relieve this dyspnea and then prevent those patients from deterioration into critical ill. So the data will be coming out in the next I think next week. So finally, I would like to mention about, so we would be happy to cooperate with GE and some other company. So the research of big data analysis of the background of COVID-19, in fact, positive subject that will be carried on have been carried on in the United States, but we are doing this one. So immediately with 1 to 2 million people. And the second will be a database with biological resources platform for respiratory disease and dynamic pulmonary function model of respiratory disease. And also, this is we have published primary data of clinical characteristics of coronavirus disease. So in China, now we've complete another data. So because when we collect this data of 1,099 patients, that's only in admission, during admission. Now we know what happens in this kind of patient. So we give another summary of this kind. And then about AI, artificial intelligence. So make a prediction model for risk of COVID-19 in critical ill based on AI. And then CD-based diagnosis AI model for this COVID-19, and CD-based AI diagnosis model for pulmonary nodules, which is in GE have been already done this for a long time, and AI diagnosis model based on OCT image, the so-called OCT optimal coherence tomography, and also the pulmonary diffusion capacity, this lung function, and the image, how to match the image model based on AI. This is also we are planning to do. Well, thank you very much. And then we have to think about one world and one fight. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much for Professor Zhong. It's very insightful sharing, and it's truly actually intrigue us thinking when is the right timing to intervene the COVID-19 and how to do it. And so thanks, Professor Zhong again. And the next, let's move on to our next topic.
Yeah.
Actually, we have a question section. Sure. Okay. Is there any Matthias? Hello, Matthias.
We are moving the questions towards the end of the session. Is that right? When we're having the Q&A section?
Yes, but if you have any questions, you can through me as well.
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay, keep going. Okay. Sure. Let's actually we have a lot of questions on the line, but we probably will leave it to the end of the section so we can have the Q&A sections. Okay. So our next topic, we have actually Professor He for you. So Professor He is going to share with us, how artificial intelligence can help the COVID-19 diagnosis. And also he will be sharing his opinion about even in future how artificial intelligence can shape the technology trend. Please, Professor He.
Okay, just now Professor Zhong is already introduced the whole information about the coronavirus COVID-19, and now I will do some just like this picture article. Professor just now introduced about in the beginning of in China the patients 2099 the case about respiratory. Maybe later we have another research about more and more the Chinese patients about finally the clinical capacity. We had another research about the comorbidity about its burden. And how about the coronavirus patient? If the patient has another complication, the patient, like the older patient, the more the complication, maybe the patient is easy to get into the critical illness. And just like this, the curve. And if the patient know the morbidity, and maybe the lower danger, like the more the morbidity, and the patient more danger. And our research focus on the humor and the COPD and other. Yeah, this is another paper about the tumor patient. For the tumor patient, and because the patient, most patients that the society is lower, maybe some patients have set the radiotherapy, and maybe set the chemotherapy, so the patient is more easy to get dangerous. So we have another research on how to use the AI to prediction the model for the risk of the critical illness. Now, so more and more the patient is suffer the COVID-19, and I think we know maybe more than 80% is the slide. And how about another 20%? And we know that 6.5% of case will develop into a critical illness, and the mortality is higher, nearly 50%. And so we use our model to predict what type of patient is easy to into the critical illness. So we use the training the method, training the 1,590 case. And use another more than the 1,000 case to validation this training model. And so we use the model, and we use normogram to predict we create a very simple predictor model on the it's on our country, the WeChat. It's really easy to use this simple model to predict the patient. How about the situation? Easy to do the critical illness, and we use the 10P risk factor to simply to calculate how about the patient situation. So this model is very good, and the AUC is nearly the 0.91. So that the COVID-19 patient, the separate two groups. One group is the high risk, another is the lower or maybe the minor to progress into the critical illness. So this simple predictor model, we very easy to check it in the WeChat the website. We use it. Another, we use the CT scan for diagnostic for the AI model for the COVID-19. The background is just in the beginning of COVID-19, not so many places they have the PCR RNA to check the patient. We use the CT to check the patient and to estimate how about the patient, the diagnosis, and differentiate, and how about the patient recovery. So just like this, the different the CT scan, like bacteria, pneumonia, and the virus pneumonia, COVID-19, and just look from the physician to look from maybe just like the virus pneumonia and COVID-19 is very similar. So we use the AI, the model to treat the machine and use the machine and just like the virus pneumonia and other. The AUC is 0.97, and COVID-19 and another virus pneumonia, the AUC reached 0.93. So we also use the radiologist to read the CT scan, and we see the sensitive and the specialist. For the senior radiologist, the AUC is 0.86. Another is similar, but for the AI, the AUC is 2.92 to the totally to the 2.86. So this CT scan not just use CT only, and maybe we provide this CT scan with clinical can rest together, and we use let the AI diagnosis the ACE from the 2.94 to the 95. So we also use this AI to estimate how about the quality of the medicine. From this quality lesson, we can estimate how about the patient prognosis and how about the patient recovery, how fast the recovery. So with research and our team, Tencent AI lab together. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Professor He. I think that's because AI has been a very hot topic in this field. I think there will be a lot of learning and exchange of information cross continent as well. And thanks, Professor He again. And next, we're moving into our next speaker, who is Professor Li. Professor Li is going to share with us his speech about the personal protective equipment for the healthcare professionals during the virus outbreak. believe a lot of affiliation from, especially from Europe, are facing these challenges right now. Please, Professor.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. My topic is personal protective equipment, PPE, for the health care workers. This data is from the newspaper or something, the other news agency. As the 15th April, the number of the infected health workers in China at the early stage of the pandemic, there are more than 3,000 health workers were infected and 22 died at the early stage. But after that, after February 17th, there are no health workers were infected among the more than 42,000 health workers in Wuhan. Also, when you see the based on the reports, we spend more than 20,000 infected health workers infected with 120 days. Also, a similar data you can see here in Germany, also in the states, more than 9,000 health workers was infected. So, the personal PPE is very important for the medical, for the health care workers. Yes, the guideline for the health workers how to deal with the medical procedure by the WHO. So, based on this guideline, we can see for the health worker performing the aerosol generating procedure, the protective PPE should be very. It's the most important procedure in the different equipment item. And so when you see the in addition to the PPE, also the room, the ventilated room is also required. Also the personnel, the limit number or limit person is also another important procedure for the procedure. So here's the item required based on the WHO guideline. Different procedure require a different item, like the mask or the respirator or the glove or something like that. In China, we also have a based on our national health commission. We also have the guideline for the working with the COVID-19 for the patient with the COVID-19. The item include the breathing protection, eye-based protection item. Also another trunk or mid protection item, hands or feet protection. The procedure is very important for the medical for the health care workers. It is essential to get the permit before you receive the training procedure, like how to put on the masking, the procedure for the masking, or the wearing procedure, or the take-off procedure, something like that. And also, they are based on the guideline of our national health commission. We have the three different grades for different procedure. Grade 1 is the standard procedure. The item include the cap or mask, both, and is capable to the general medical activity. For the grade 2 is enhanced protection. The item include the mask, N95 mask. It's able the medical staff in the close contact with the patient of the COVID-19. And the third grade is the based on the grade 2, it also requires the full respiratory or positive pressure cover. Is suitable to the very high risk procedure like the intubation, tracheotomy, or bronchoscopy. Here's the high risk procedure report that is the reprint. This study was done in Shenzhen, China. We go to the important point. Here we can see the different sample type. Here we can see the throat swab, the nasal swab, sputum, or bar. You can see for the severe patient for this group, the bar viral RNA positive rate is the most high for the bar. So here we can see for the bar is the most sensitive sample. Another study is also just gamma. Also showed that based on different sample, the bar is the most highest for the RNA test. So here's our clinical practice is based on the grade 3 PPE. You can give the watch. So it's for the treatment. After 3 times the bath, the X-ray was improved. And another cases is showing the secretion. The sputum was blocked in the left major bronchus after bronchoscopy, such after secretion. So the X-ray shows improved very severe, very obviously. This study is in the Chinese curricular respiratory disease. We studied the 12 cases with COVID-19. These 12 cases was successfully incubated under the guidance of the bronchoscopy. All the health workers was protected under the PPE with the positive pressure protective food. The procedure is very useful. So 2 or 3 minutes, no complications. And the study showed that no infected for the nice health workers who before this incubation. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor Lee, and thanks to all 3 professors for your excellent sharing. And I know, we're a little bit overrun, but if you don't mind, because I think of my colleague Matthias, he's actually looking at the screen and taking questions from our, European colleagues. So probably we can hand over to Matthias for the Q&A section. Matthias, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tua. My name is Matthias Goyen. I'm G Healthcare's Chief Medical Officer for Europe. And first of all, I would like to thank you so much, Professor Zhong, Professor He, and Professor Lee, for sharing the Chinese perspective on the COVID-19 pandemic. Really great insights. Let me quickly give you some context regarding the situation over here in Europe. All countries in Europe have confirmed COVID-19 cases, with Italy, Spain, and France being hit the worst by the coronavirus. Every second COVID-19 case globally occurs in Europe, and 2 out of 3 patients who died due to COVID-19 globally die in Europe. We don't follow a suppression strategy, but we have all learned about the value of social distancing. And if we don't belong to the critical workforce, we are smart, we better stay home. We help flatten the curve, as you had mentioned, Professor Zhong, and thereby save lives. So the audience on this webcast right now consists of intensive care doctors, radiologists, anesthesiologists, ICU nurses, but also GPs and doctors from other specialties, and also hospital administrators, as well as colleagues from medtech and pharma. I saw a lot of questions coming in online during your presentations, and the participants also had the opportunity to ask questions in advance. And we would be really honored if you gave us like 10 more minutes so we can discuss at least the top questions. So if I may, I would directly go to the first question here that several participants have asked. In our discussions in Europe, we mainly focus on the involvement of the lungs in patients with COVID-19, but there are reports out that show that COVID-19 can also affect the heart and the brain. Can you confirm those observations in your patient cohort, I would say, and how do those manifestations look like? Are they rather rare, or is this a pretty common finding? What can you tell us?
Well, I suppose we're very aware about the heart and circulation, and also the brain is very much involved, including the autopsy. So the heart, it didn't show that troponin or some other enzymes really increased. I think that's really related to the comorbidity of those patients who have underlying disease, so some cardiovascular disease. During our check with the ultrasound and EKG from time to time. So I think it's comorbidity. It's not really involved of the, and also during the autopsy, we didn't find that. But one point we would like to add, to mention about the kidney. I think the kidney, it really shows some renal turbulent tubules. So it's involved of this. It's a necrosis during autopsy. And also we have some of the groups have found something like 1/4, 25 to 30% of patients that the kidney is very much involved. So this is what we have saw at the moment. So from the central nervous system and others, not that apparent.
Thank you very much. Another cluster of questions, I would say, circles around the medical technology used in the patient COVID-19 pathway. What are some of the technologies that you believe are most promising in the fight against COVID-19? And especially a couple of people asked, how do you see the role of ultrasound in COVID-19 patients?
Yeah, ultrasound, so some of their study has shown just ultrasound can make a prediction whether this patient is in what kind of status. So moderate or serious and critical ill. So we have not this experience, so not yet. But your question is not only limited in this ultrasound and any others. So whether you have your question has involved or what kind of management will be available. Is that right?
Right. I mean, ultrasound might not seem an obvious weapon against COVID-19, but it's often the image modality that is most readily available, right, compared to CT.
Of course.
Because at point of care, it's safe, there is no radiation, it's low cost. But please talk about CT if you like, I mean, for initial diagnosis.
Well, to initial diagnosis, it definitely is necessary. But I don't think it will depend on the CT scan, because in quite a few number of the patient in the so-called, we call them mild disease, in particular in Chinese, not actually guideline, but it shows a small percentage. There's no any abnormality in routine CT scan, and that this shows some infection. And then the symptoms and PCR positive, and then this is what we would like to show, to think about GE can do something. I mean, the early detection of this kind of disease, because in the early stage, sometimes there's no apparent abnormality in this kind. So this is something I think in the CT scan, we need to do more research about it. Density or some make it more accurate or precisely, and then find it in the early stage. It's really important. But anyway, it shows some of the patient from the whole process, there's no any abnormality of the CT scans. Actually, he recovered. That's a very mild disease of these patients.
Right. And I have another question that several participants asked. How do you see the backlog of cancer patients and stroke patients? I read an article the other day. Basically, the author was asking, where are all the heart attacks? Because people might be afraid to show up in a hospital with stroke or heart attacks because they fear catching COVID-19. Have you also seen that in China, that patients are afraid and don't want to get treatment for other reasons?
Yes, that's true. Yes, in particular in some of the patients who have got heart failure or some cancer and so on. So just now, Professor He mentioned, so in particular, we have made some analysis of lung cancer, right? Lung cancer is pretty high. I mean, the mortality is pretty high. Actually, those patients, they are afraid of going to the hospital. And then until the disease is getting really severe, and then it's too late for them to receive any available treatment. Yes, we have the same problem.
Any suggestions on how we could solve that? Is it like teaching those patients, okay, the likelihood of attracting COVID is really limited. Please get your treatment that you need. Do you have any recommendations? Because it seems to be a huge problem in Europe and the US.
Yes, that's right. But as you know, in this time in China, I think the majority of the patients, they receive all the treatment as free of charge, right? So that's a big advantage of that. So the patients, when they got ill now, so all of them will go to the hospital. In particular, those with a very severe comorbidity, they are not worried about the medical expense. So that's another important part of that.
Right, I see. Just seeing a couple of questions that circle around the interest in antibody testing in coronavirus. And in Europe, we are preparing to start, testing to find out who already has had, the coronavirus, and the test will look for antibodies in the blood. So my question is, how much antibody testing has China carried out, and what do you think is the value of these tests?
Well, you mean antibody test for the diagnosis or for the...
No, not for diagnosis, antibody to see if you already had, contact, if you already have had COVID-19.
Oh, yes, of course. So that IgG and IgM have already been popularized inside China. So we are going to have a checkup of the screening. So both PCR as well as plus, and a double check of the patient of antibody, serum antibody, in particular in those who have some still PCR positively have recovered from the disease. But if they are showing the very strong serum IgG, very high titer, I think these patients already have resistance. So it's not definitely will not have this opportunity of reinfection. No. So that's useful. Right.
Thank you. So before I hand back to War, I have a question from my side. What were your 3 key learnings in China which you think should be implemented in other regions like over here in Europe as we continue to respond to the COVID-19? Is there anything you'd say we especially need to take care of? You're on mute. At least I cannot hear you.
Well, I suppose could you repeat your questions?
Sure. What were your 3 key learnings in China which you think could be implemented in other regions like over here in Europe as we continue to respond to the COVID-19? Is there anything you'd say we especially need to take care of?
Well, I think the most successful experience maybe the upstream strategy for the prevention. So this is most important things. I think once the patient got infected, so that's very important for China to follow up. There's close contacts. So that's very important because just now I have shown you the so-called control measures in the UK, and that's once if one gets ill, he will be stayed at home. Well, what happens in his her relatives or their families? I think in China, so all of them will receive follow-up checkup. So that's most important to reduce further infection. I think that's most successful. That, in other words, that's distancing, or so where mask is going down to the community level, to the home. So that's I think pretty important. So even now it's under control for more than 1 month, but people still just like that. Of course, we have another questions: how to get it back to go to the school and have some classes, and then work, recover our routine working. Right. That's a big new challenge. But actually, we are going immediately, gradually. So for this kind.
So again, thank you very much, Professor Zhong, Professor He, Professor Li. Now back to you. I know there are many Chinese doctors on this webcast as well, and they also might have a question.
Okay. In fact, thanks, because we have a lot of the Chinese audience as well. So we do want to ask some questions to Professor Zhong on behalf of our Chinese audience. One of the questions which is most commonly being asked is when the protection will the protection during the COVID-19 will continue afterwards, or is there any signal you will suggest will be the time point for the majority of community to lower the level of protection, like not wear that mask?
Well, I think this is a question always keep in my mind. So in Chinese situation at the moment, or actually we can get rid of the mask at the moment. However, we have a big problem with the big difference between China and outside China. In particular, in Europe, I hope in Europe we'll be going to the plateau. In particular, in some of the countries like Spain, like Italy and France, and of course UK and some others. So to the plateau and then going down, because all of those countries have strengthened their measures to limit people. So go like that, go joining together and some other. It shows that some efficacy of that to prevent that. So this is why. So that's why. So we are facing some of a big problem of import patients. So we actually have happened now in the border of Russia and China, and also some other places. We have a lot of people coming into China and actually they are infected. So we transfer to the others. That's a big problem of us.
Thanks, Professor Zhong. I think it's actually overrun of our today's events. Professor Zhong, would you like to give us some closing remarks of today's event?
Well, once again, I do hope. I mean, in Europe, I can see the future, the near future. it seems to me it's going to the plateau. And then in some of the countries in particular. So I hope, so if we can keep going on, not really in a hurry to recover all the work. And then also, as all the country had this problem. So economy, if stop economy developing, that will cause a big problem of instability of the society. But anyway, the human's life is the first. So we have to do our best to keep people alive, healthy, and then think about the economy. So that's our strategy about it. So I suppose in Europe, some of the countries and the leaders, they are aware of this. So that's why they strengthen the action of this. I hope it will be successful. So I do hope in a not only time, say like just 1 week and then going down. So everybody will be happy to see this the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Professor Zhong, and thanks everyone on the line. And let's keep our dialogue open and work together to fight this global pandemic. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.